Look, guys, college football is not getting smaller. This is my opinion based on this news here. We're going to get into it a little bit, but essentially, we got news that why the 14 team college football playoff came to be. And the reason why is because the Big Ten and the SEC put their foot down and said, if you don't give us a 14 team playoff and you don't give us the revenue we want, we walk. And the Big Ten and the SEC, according to Greg Sankey, said that they were willing to walk if they did not get what they want. Now, there's a whole bunch of things that we could get into here. The thing I want to focus on is this stupid 70 team Super League that they're talking about. There is no way that the Big Ten and the SEC are going to add more teams to their revenue that are not going to help with them. People have been talking about these eight divisions or whatever, where you have like Boise State in there and you have Cincinnati in there. And I'm not trying to disparage those universities, but those universities do not bring in nearly as much as the Georgias or the Ohio States or the, put Michigans or whatever, put your team in there. They're not making nearly as much money as those. And so at the end of the day, it makes no sense for them to do that. And this story just basically confirms it. Greg Sankey saying that they put together this 14-team playoff for more revenue. Ross Dellinger said that right now, the Big Ten and the SEC are making 58%, I think it's 58%, 58% of college football playoff cash. 2 conferences out of 8 and Notre Dame. But still, 2 out of 8 are putting together 58% of the revenue from the college football playoffs. Zach, let's go to you first here. I mean, can college football survive if the Big Ten and the SEC ever did decide to just split, cut it, say, we're done, we're going to go make our own NFL light over here and do our own thing, forget you Big 12, forget you SEC? I mean, can college football survive that way?
Yes. I wouldn't like it, but I mean, so I live a mile from Bucknell University, which is an FCS school, and they're not a very good FCS school, but they're an FCS school. And I think that, they won the Orange Bowl in the 50s. So you have a version of college football, they're in the Patriot League, they're a conference, but it'll look different. I hope it doesn't go that way. I think I still like the conferences the way it is, but there is a reality that, we were just talking about it with NIL and transfer portal and all that stuff. We are going to a more professional model. And so what does that mean then for college football in the way that the powers that be want it to go? And so we don't have a super league right now. I wonder if a commissioner comes in, how does that change things? Because I totally agree with you. In the current structure, the current model, the SEC and the Big Ten hold all the cards, even more so than Notre Dame, which I think we've been saying for years now that Notre Dame has kind of lost its power. It still has some power. They still have some power, but not nearly to the point that the SEC and the Big Ten do. But if you get a commissioner who all of a sudden makes this much more a professional model and you kind of strip away the conferences outright, then it becomes a bit more interesting because now you're not just talking about revenue for a conference. You're talking about revenue for the sport itself and then for each of the institutions. So I don't know. I think it really depends on how this goes. Do they get a commissioner who kind of strips away the conferences altogether, which I think that will take a long time if it ever happens. So
interesting. Ryan, your thoughts on if the college football can survive if the Big Ten and SEC break away?
I think yes, because at the end of the day, most people love the NFL and pro teams want to see who their next best rookie is going to be. And if that happens to be, the number one, well, we've already got, we know who the number 1 or number 2 kind of pick was. Let's just say we knew Marvin Harrison Jr. was going to be in the top 10, right? So guess what? A lot of teams want to see what that guy looks like. So, Ohio State's they're in their Super League. Okay, whatever. I don't really agree with it, but I'm going to watch them. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and then, hey, Caleb Williams in the USC, He's now in the Big 18. Let's see. Yeah, I'm gonna watch him because you know what? I want to see. I want to see what this guy's gonna do. He's probably gonna be drafted first. So yeah. So yes, to me, and a long story short, I think people are always gonna watch big time college football because that always translates and leads into the NFL. And honestly, on Saturdays, it's still exciting, and I think it's a tradition that many people have been doing for decades now. And so I don't see that changing. I don't think many people are going to like it. I don't necessarily like it. I don't think that to me doesn't sound, I think looking forward to like a Big Ten title game or having those games have more of a meaning to a playoff or a national championship to where it all leads together. I've just liked that type of scenario, but I don't see, viewership changing at all. I think people are still going to watch.
Yeah.
I think they will too. My concern is for some of the schools that maybe don't have the viewership of, an Ohio State or USC or some of these other larger schools that are in larger areas. Just so happens that, when it comes to mind to me, a school that has not always been so excellent in football and is in a little bit of a smaller area. Sorry, Sammy, but Indiana does come to mind when I think of those type of things. I mean, Sammy, by no means, I was just talking to Zack on another podcast about how much every single team brings to the Big Ten. So by no means am I, pseudo pushing the Indiana out here, but I do think that this is a question people have asked before. So I'm curious your thoughts on it. Do you believe that every team in the Big Ten and the SEC is completely safe, that they will continue to look at schools and say, yes, you're not in as large of an area, but you've been in the Big Ten for, I don't even know how many years Indiana's been in the Big Ten. I think longer than Ohio State, actually.
Founding member of the Big Ten.
Yeah, founding member. So yeah, before Ohio State, look at you. But I mean, I think like that is what would kill college football more to me, is if the Big Ten ever was like, hey, these schools, get out of our conference. We don't want you anymore. Like, that's the kind of stuff that really makes me terrified. Sammy, do you have any of the same concerns?
Yeah. So my big fear, the thing that makes college football great is the tradition and the rivalries. And Ryan, Indiana and Illinois are maybe an hour and a half away from each other. They rarely play. That's a series that needs to play. I'm not going to get into the argument over the basketball rivalry, whatever, but that's a series that people want to see. IU, Purdue, Penn State, West Virginia, Penn State, Pitt, Ohio State, Michigan. They want to see those rivalries where that's where it's different than the NFL. Like, okay, yeah, you have your Patriots Jets rivalry or whoever's good at the time, but these are rivalries that go back over 100 years. And I take Maryland for example, and I went out for a couple Maryland games and talked to their fans, and like, look, they were like 6-0 and half their stadium's full. They don't want to play Rutgers or Iowa, or they want to play Virginia, North Carolina, Duke, NC State, Wake Forest, because those rivalries have been embedded into their lives for hundreds of years. And college football and college sports is so unique because you feel like you have a vested interest because you went to the school. Look, I invested into the school. They invested in me, and we're in this together. Whereas, like, look, I'm a Jets fan. I care, but it's like, okay, I'm only a Jets fan because my dad was the doctor and we went to games for free. But it's, it's not the same. I think that's where college football, you can't lose that soul. And let's be honest, there's maybe 3 teams that deserve to play for a national title. Stop trying to make it the NCAA tournament. The first weekend of the NCAA tournament is fantastic. I love it. It's fun. It's basketball, wall to wall, great. But that's not what college football is, and that's not what it should become. Because really, is James Madison gonna go to the final? No. It's always going to come down to the 2 best teams. You saw it this year with Michigan. And Washington, they were clearly the two best teams all season. They ended up there. You saw with Georgia and Alabama. 95% of the time, the two best teams are going to face off. You don't need a 14 playoff. You don't need an 18 playoff. You know, that Super League thing, I get it. I'd like them to go to some sort of relegation like European soccer.
Yeah.
But the danger with that is if you get that private equity and it becomes like live golf or stuff like that, as fun as it would be to do those, quads or whatever they broke it up into do, man, you're going down a slippery slope with private equity if you do that. So I hope it doesn't change. I want to play games that we've played for 100 years and stuff like that.
Yeah, JR, do you mind if I jump in on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just to say I really appreciate what you're saying, Sammy, because I think whoever takes ownership, I hope is a fan of college football and not just a businessman. Like, obviously, they're probably going to have a mind for business.
That's where it's gone. You see, all these commissioners now are TV guys. Oh,
Yeah.
How can we get these TV slots? And part of me hopes that, hey, okay, it's going to be all this change, but then they're going to go into divisions and it's going to be regionalized again. And it's like, okay, we're back where we started, and stuff like that.
Well, and I think if, I kind of set out maybe a doomsday scenario for the common fan, which is like, there is everything is kind of neutralized. Conferences are neutralized. I could see that happening for the sake of like business, but my hope is that it actually becomes more regionalized in the midst of that. Like, and that really those conference championships, I've always wanted the conference championships to be the gateway into the playoff. And I think that could still happen. But I think, honestly, I think the SEC and the Big Ten, I love the Big Ten, obviously, but these power plays frustrate me because on one hand, I'm like, it's good that they have the power. But on the other hand, it's like they could force their hand into something that actually isn't really good for the sport. So.
And really quickly, the rivalry thing here he was talking about, it's interesting because it's like, what if, Illinois or Indiana or Ohio State got taken out of the Big Ten, and let's say we got just shoved in, and then would our fans really care about that match, Butler? Like, probably not. It's like, so, because Illinois Northwestern at the end of the year, every Illini fan knows, like, hey, we're going to go out and. It was usually Pat Fitzgerald, but we're like, we're taking the Wildcats, look forward to that game. We always look forward to playing Iowa. And now it's like, you might play Iowa in 5 years, But even then, you're never going to play Iowa. So I could see the apathy with the Maryland fan base because it is pretty sad, even for basketball. They don't show up, and I'm thinking, and that's a basketball school. Like, where are the fans? It's like they just don't care.
They don't care about playing whatever Michigan or Ohio State best. They want to play Duke, NC State, Wake Forest, Virginia. They want to play those schools that they have hated for 100 years.
Yeah.
Totally agree. On one hand, the 70-team Super League does sound nice because of the regionality aspects like we talked about, but I feel
but
like
if you're going to do it, everybody has to be in danger of relegation. Can't just be the last 8 teams or 10 teams. Everybody needs to be, imagine IU Purdue, winner gets to stay, at the top tier, switch at the top tier and stuff like that. Or, my probably, I don't like Ohio State, but it'd be fun to see Ohio State, Michigan, both at 6 and 5. One gets relegated. People would tune into that just to hate watch it. So
I have seen Ohio State and Michigan fight over going to the national championship. I don't know if I want to see the levels of toxicity that would happen if they're fighting over relegation. Oh my god.
We would get a lot of views.
See, JR, JR, you're not old enough. I don't know about you, Zach. I am old enough to remember when Ohio State really wasn't that good in the early 90s. I mean, the early
when they were losing to Michigan. Yeah.
It was slapping them around with
losing to Indiana.
Kirk Herbstreit was the quarterback getting slapped around. I remember that. Yeah. Yeah, he wasn't. It's like everybody's like, "Oh, Kirk Herbstreit is great, Ohio State alum." I'm like, how were their teams with him as the quarterback?
I don't know any Ohio State fans that have felt great about Kirk Herbstreit throughout his entire career at Ohio State or in his broadcast. I actually think Ohio State fans are some of the ones that hate him the most, which is hilarious. But
yeah.
But yeah, so